They mentioned Halloween 5, how there was some tension, some conflict on Halloween 5. Even Moustapha Akkad and some other people mentioned how it was too quick. Should have been at least 2 years between Part 4 and Part 5. And it just showed how Dominic Ottman jerk off. Gerard, whatever the fuck his name. Guy who made Part 5, which I hate. And one day I will redo those Halloween movie reviews. Someday down the road. Someday I will. I know I will. But this fucking... He didn't come to the convention, thank God. Although he's on that shitty Halloween 5 commentary. But there's like interviews from when Halloween 5 was made. And you just know this guy is a douchebag idiot. Just the way he talks. It's like a thing with the cat and a mouse. And Michael Myers is the cat and the mouse. And I'm like, dude, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You made Omen 4 and Halloween 5. 2 shitty sequels. You know what the fuck you're doing. And like, Great Nicotero tells a story about how, oh, you should do this and we can really show the makeup effect. And Dominic and Jerkoff's like, oh, what do you know? You're just a makeup artist. I'm like, fuck you, buddy. And like, he had tensions about how he wanted more blood. And I remember, it's not in this documentary, but I remember hearing that Donald Pleasance was not a fan of, the more blood and all that type of stuff. And some of the people they interview, like once in a while you have like Clive Barker. He mentions a really interesting thing, how after Freddy vs. Jason, there was talk, of course, Michael Myers versus Pinhead, because the company owned Michael Myers and they owned the Hellraiser. I mean, Dimension owned those two. And Clive Barker actually says how he thought, wow, that'd be a cool idea. I could write it and John Carpenter could direct it. And Clive Barker says, this is what he says on the documentary, that he had called John Carpenter and he said, well, what do you think? You think, because if you don't want to do it, I'd do it. And John Carpenter said, yeah, sure, I'd do it. And I'm thinking, Michael Myers vs. Pinhead, directed by John Carpenter and written by Clive Barker? Why the fuck wasn't that movie made? Just the curiosity, think about that. It just would have been awesome. Even if it didn't do well, even if it was shitty, it would have been awesome. Just the fucking... But if some fucking producer, if they had the opportunity, some fucking producer said, oh no, we have Michael Myers, H2O did well and all this shit, we don't need to do that. Oh, I will fucking rip a goddamn mud hole. I'd rather see that, John Carpenter and Clive Barker doing that movie, than a fucking remake. By the way, Rob Zombie's in this fucking documentary, and he's still a douchebag, because he's like, one stupid thing he says, which I found very ironic, is how the sequels, they say they dwindled. And basically Rob Zombie's saying, yeah, you have faceless villains and faceless killer, and faceless villain and faceless victims. And he talks about how how a lot of people will go to see a sequel even though they know it's shitty, or even though they know they're gonna hate it. I go, that's fucking ironic, coming from the guy who made H2 with fucking Michael Myers and a fucking white horse. I wonder if he had that same instinct. Well, people will go even if they think it's shitty. Yeah, Rob Zombie. Yeah. Fuck you, man. Where was I after all that ranting? Oh yeah, they talked a little bit about stalkers, how some of the stars have been stalked, especially Danielle Harris, how there was a guy who hired a private investigator, found out where she lived, got to her home, had like a 9mm and like a shotgun in the trunk, and how the guy was still around, still out there, and how that's why she doesn't do conventions that much. I go, well fuck, if he fucking went to your door with a 9mm, how the fuck is that guy not behind bars? Obviously you saw the guy's face. The guy probably told you his real name somehow, some way. It's like, are they? What are they? I just feel bad about it. Just like with coming up with when I talked about this and what happened to Adrian King. It's just a very sad story, but I'll get to that in a minute. But towards part 5, not that good. Part 6, they went into and how what was that girl's name? I don't know, the girl who's sort of the lead in part 6. They talk about how Quentin Tarantino had been taught to write in the script. He had written the script, and they said no. And the girl really had strong words for the director Joe Chappelle, basically saying that he didn't care about Halloween. He just cared about the 3-picture deal that he might have gotten from Dimension. I thought, ooh, wow, shit. And like John Carl Buechler, who had been hired to do After Effects for part 4, he was hired for part 6, and basically, we don't do all this shit. And basically just kept cutting back effects and cutting back effects and cutting back effects. And then John Carl Buechler was like, what the fuck, we're standing around here with... He doesn't say this, but basically the gist is we're standing here with the thumb up our ass, It's like we're standing around here, we got nothing to do, and even when we do, it's like we're just doing typical stabbings, and, The one thing they could do was they blew that guy up. Danielle Harris was offered a role in part 6, but she didn't like the way her character died, which I can't blame her for. And it's like, well, fuck it, if I don't do this, I want to get paid. And then they only offered her scale, and she's like, okay, I won't do it. So they talk, they have even the interview with the girl who took her place. Then, like, they talk about H2O, and they talk about how John Carpenter was approached by Jamie Lee Curtis and others, and he's like, thanks, but no thanks, Some of the problems in H2O, I guess, was the music. Like, they kept fucking with the composer. Like, he had done this cue, then they took it out and they changed it and put it in a different cue. Kind of like, that happens a lot. Kind of like what Ridley Scott did to Jerry Goldsmith on Alien, where he did the score and then they changed shit around and they fuck with it. The other was The Mask, which was a really interesting story because Steve Meyer, the director, basically they wanted to be cheapskates and be like, well, we don't want to use The Mask from before. We want to make sort of an approximation, is the word they used, but not enough to, have us have to pay the fees for the likeness of The Mask that was used before. So, sort of a general approximation, but not enough for us to put in the legal problems. Like, legal problems is a fucking Halloween sequel. It's like, hey, instead of Jason Voorhees wearing a hockey mask, let's go to a Red Wings game and get the goalie mask, or hell, get the mask that Casey Jones wears in fucking Ninja Turtles, or get, hey, let's not do hockey at all. Let's do it a fucking football helmet. That's not a close approximation. It's a sport. It's something you put on your fucking head. Like, it just... And The Mask, you saw, they had the footage, the rough footage. The Mask was so shitty. It looked like I don't even know what the fuck it looked like. It was... Adrian Naturo tells how... Because I think it was KMB, which they were hired to work on The Mask. And I think it was KMB. They were first, and they were on the screen, and someone said, that's not Michael Myers' mask. I'm like, oh shit. They had filmed like half the film already. Then they didn't. So halfway, you shot like half the scenes. Oh shit, we gotta change the mask. So they got like John Carl Buechler behind Steve Meyer's back to do a mask. Steve Meyer got pissed off, and then he got Stan Winston's group to do a mask. And you see like all of them in the movie, including the scene with the CGI mask, because they didn't have time to do it. I went, when you make a Halloween movie, wouldn't you think that's the first fucking thing you do is to get the mask set and right? It's just me being silly. And they do talk about Part 8 and like I was talking about before, they have some people from online. One guy who runs the Arrow in the Head, John Fallon, Which I'll admit, sometimes I don't agree with his reviews. Like, he liked Universal Soldier Regeneration. I don't think so. But, you know, you can't hate a person just because they like a movie. That's not right. So, I disagree with him, but he was the few bits that he was in, he was pretty funny. He really made fun of Tina in Part 5. He's like, Tina, the character Tina. He's, out of all the horror films I've seen, is one of the only ones where I wanted to just strangle her. I'm like, yeah, that's true. He's like, why is there a mute kid in a Michael Halloween movie? You talk about Part 5. And he talked about Part 8, like, you know, this is when they forgot about suspense. They just wanted to make a product. You know, oh, Busta Rhymes, he's good with the kids. And John Fallon's like, again, he's the arrow in the head from the website.